often people think what they need is individual, customized support, but there's something about community. And I don't know, what do you think it is about community?
I think it's just on a neurological level, those mirror neurons. That's
Yes.
how we learn, like from being a child, we need our mother to validate our feelings and we need to see that she feels what we're feeling and digesting it in a way that makes it digestible for us. So that's how neurologically we're made to be. So for me, group therapy and group coaching just echoes that we need those feelings mirrored. We need those emotions validated. And that can unhook us into moving a bit past the shame, whatever it is. So for me, it's physiological. It's who we are. We can't get away from it.
And I think it goes both ways too, that we're getting that mirroring from others. But as we see others learning and growing in ways that we're trying to learn and grow, that there's also that neurological and social too, right? That there's that element of that we're social beings who are wired to be like those we're in community with because it creates safety. And if you're extricated from your tribe, you're not safe any longer. And thinking about our primitive versions of our humanity or other cultures too, right? That you need community for safety. And so if we are in community with those who are moving in the direction that we're moving, or those who are a few steps ahead of us, or that we can reflect and support people who are learning what we've just learned, it's almost like a passive way to change. Because you say, it's neurological. We're just doing what our
100%.
brains want to do. You're listening to the Brave OT podcast with me, Karlien Neek. This podcast is all about empowering occupational therapists to step up, level up, blaze some trails, and maybe engage in a little conscious rebellion in service of our profession, our clients, our work, our businesses, and living our mission wholeheartedly. We are all about keeping it real, doing hard things, unhustling, being curious, exploring, growing through our challenges, and finding joy, fulfillment, and vitality as we do so. Really, we're OTing ourselves and each other. I hope you love this episode. I think this is one of those conversations that feels like you might picture us sitting in the backyard, having a barbecue, a glass of wine, maybe a beer, talking about life as a mental health OT. When I found this person, I felt like I found my twin. She's a mental health OT in South Africa. She coaches other OTs, much like I do. And we both aren't afraid to get the help we need to be able to grow in the ways we need to grow, to do the things we want to do. So I invite you to grab a glass of wine or whatever your preferred beverage is and join us in this conversation. Karlien Terblanche and I had a lovely conversation a little while back, and I'd love to hear what you think about it. I'm really grateful that you chose to be here.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I love the name of your podcast, and I'm in your coaching program, which I'm sure we'll talk about a bit. But I've been hearing about the podcast going to happen, so I'm really excited.
As I've been dragging my feet a little bit on it, so you've been hearing about it for a very long time.
It's awesome that I get to be on the podcast. That's really good.
Oh, I'm so grateful. It was so fun to meet you, and I met in another coaching program, and it was interesting because our names have a lot of similarity, and we both are mental health OTs, and we both coach other therapists. And I thought, wow, is this my South African twin?
Yeah, I remember when we did a call to see if I'm a good fit for your program. Yeah. And you were saying something about if there was another therapist called Karlien who could help you, how could you help? And it really sometimes feels like an extra brain, like your brain is my brain, just in a different country. It's lovely.
And we have a lot of similarities in our values and in the way we like to help people and in being quite pragmatic. And yeah, it's pretty neat that we found each other on the other sides of the world. And I think COVID I wasn't connecting with OTs internationally before the pandemic. It's a gift.
Yeah, absolutely not. It was in COVID that I started doing people's online coaching programs and like seeing people post things more. I think just even being more present online has been, just come so naturally after COVID, which we didn't do before. It also offers another treatment modality. Like I'm seeing so many clients online, which I don't think would have done that much before COVID. Basically didn't do.
It's
So,
true.
yeah.
Can you share with us a little bit more about what you do?
Yeah, so I am a mental health occupational therapist. So I have only been a mental health occupational therapist since my first year of working. Yes. I've worked in community settings in mental health. I've worked for government hospitals. Then I worked for a private psychiatric clinic for about 4 or 5 years. And then 2016, I decided that I wanted to do my own thing, wanted to work for myself. And yeah, that was maybe now 2022. So I've been running my own practice for about 6 years. And yeah, I absolutely love it. I've grown a lot more than I thought I could. It's been really cool working with myself. And then in 2021, I started a coaching program to help other mental health therapists start their own private practice. Because I was also sitting in a situation where I have such a long wait list and I want, I guess, both. And so I want like clients to be able to access more resources and be able to find a therapist because it's really difficult. It's difficult if you're in crisis, in mental health crisis, and you can't find someone. And then on the other hand, I wanted OTs and other therapists to have the freedom to work for themselves because it's much more sustainable. It prevents burnout. It gives us more choices, more flexibility. So that's my story.
I love it. I love it. And my experience has been with having a successful private practice and then shifting to offering coaching in addition, because I also continue my mental health practice. There was a lot of eye opening about just a whole different business model. What has that been like for you?
Yeah, it has been very interesting. And so the coaching is exclusively online. I only do online coaching. And I guess that's a lot of the tech behind that, reliability on internet. In South Africa, we have load shedding. So every now and then we don't have power for a couple of hours, which is super frustrating. Yeah, just the tech behind how people do things. And then I think there's a lot in the coaching industry that works well in I don't know, other businesses and other business models from how we price services to like terms and conditions and client stuff that if you translate it to a therapeutic business, it doesn't work exactly the same way. I think we've spoken about some of that as well in the program.
Yeah.
So I think getting that advice and figuring out what works for me in my business and like filtering and giving myself the permission to say, this I'm taking on board. This doesn't really align with my values, or I tried this and it doesn't work. And just figuring out what about this works well in a therapeutic coaching business. And I guess in a therapy business as well. 'Cause in many ways it's similar, but in many ways it's different to, I think, traditional business practices.
It's so true. And so much of the coaching training that we can take out there is by people who don't have the professional responsibilities we have. And so we can't ever overstate an outcome. We can't. And even if we're doing these things outside of our professional designation, we're not letting go of that professional designation. You and I haven't. Some people
Yeah.
do. But there's a lot of filtering and interpreting, and coaches out there going, yeah, flashy, flashy, do all this stuff.
Yeah.
5 tips. And we go, yeah, this can't be
Mm.
reduced to 5 tips. I'll try to do so authentically and responsibly, but it's a lot of kind of pausing and checking in with your own values personally and professionally.
Absolutely. And I think an element of that is I'm still seeing clients in private practice. And that's the like 80% of what I do.
Yeah.
So all the content that I put out there that's publicly accessible is potentially, and I know some of my clients do follow me on my coaching Instagram or try and sign up for my newsletter or things like that. So I want to be a holistic, full human being that my values are aligned, even though I'm doing this in a coaching capacity and this in a therapy capacity, that I still want to put the same values out there and be authentic and aligned and transparent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a tricky thing to sometimes come up against if you do coaching work and transitioning from purely therapeutic work to coaching work.
Yeah. We're whole beings in all of our roles are showing up. Even when we're doing other roles, we are still a whole person with all that goes into us.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's exactly one of the things that you and I want to talk about in this podcast is that often the things that are the barriers in our businesses, whether it's running practice or your coaching business, are the same things that are the barriers in our lives. So we come up against ourselves no matter where we
Over
are.
and
So the
over.
same insecurities, the same self-sabotage. And that very often, like purely business things don't speak to that. So a business book that maybe talks about finances doesn't talk about the stuff behind that, the thinking, the triggers, the managing yourself. And yeah, I guess that's what I've also loved about your program is that the focus is managing ourselves and figuring out our own stuff and then how that applies to your business on there.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. I can't see it another way. I've tried because all the coaching I've received, niche down, get really specific about your transformation. And I'm like, but they're whole people with whole beings that are showing up, and the internal stuff that each of us are dealing with is different. And how that shows up in our lives is unique to each individual. And I think we can't separate it out. I know a lot of coaching programs too. They'll here's a business coaching program and here's a mindset module or a
Yeah.
mindset lesson, or there's a mindset coach, which is great that they're addressing that we do have these internal obstacles to thriving or moving forward or those types of things. But I see it that if we most of the OTs who come into the program already have some sort of business, and it's not so much business coaching that they need. But if we help them from the inside, the performance will work itself out and it'll be clearer
Yeah.
to know what to do next. And we can collaborate about those things. But once you kind of work out the stuff that's getting in the way, the how isn't so hard.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that you and coaching calls have reminded me of so often is that if there's something that like my private practice runs well, I know the value that I offer there. I have a wait list. I've been doing that for a long time. So there's like a sense there of it'll be okay. In the coaching part of my business, the exact same insecurities show up now in a different way. And that's still part of me. And having someone else help you just identify that and get you into action. But I think also validate I'm not the only one that like I think everyone always in the group coach in the group calls say, I sit with that too. That happens to me too. And that takes some of the shame away because it's often that like fear shame combination that keeps us stuck.
Yeah.
And just knowing that it's human and it's normal and other people also sit with this is, yeah, just one of the things that's, I think, the most helpful. That's why I love group therapy because we can sit with this on our own. We can read all the books. We can even talk to our individual therapists until we're blue in the face.
Yeah.
But that peer-to-peer relationship sometimes just like unhooks that shame of it.
It's so interesting too, as a person who helps people, right? I almost feel like it's self-serving or something when I'm in a group coaching call of in Activate Vitality. And it's wow, it just works itself out. Like people, there's all these OTs who share a similar perspective, who share a similar language, who share a similar set of experiences, but different factors. And they you guys all just help each other. And I'm sitting there going, wow, like I'm just so
Yeah.
grateful because the help that people provide each other is much richer than I could have provided as one person with one perspective.
Mm.
And I feel like as a part of the community, I'm a peer too. I'm benefiting
Yeah,
every day.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the secret trick of what we do is that we're offering therapy or coaching, but in that we're also helping ourselves. I just so often with the group therapy, I run eating disorder groups and I sit there and I'm just like, oh my word, I am getting so much from this and I am the therapist. So yeah, that's the lovely thing. It's the secret trick of the therapy we do is that we absolutely benefit so much.
It makes us better people, I think. Yeah. You were talking about noticing that you felt pretty successful in your therapy business and you worked through some stuff to get there. And then you show up in your coaching business and go, oh, wow, some of those same insecurities have shown up again. And do you find that it showed up in a different flavor because you had managed through the first time? Like the learning through that success of your private practice, did that cause it to show up a little bit differently the second time?
That's a good question. I feel like I feel like on the one hand, it was a bit of a surprise. It was like, oh, you're still here.
But I managed to.
You know, and then it's like, we're just like layering down. So it's like a next layer of an onion. And I guess like what it did help me with was recognizing it, just going, oh, it's you again. It's not, when I think at the beginning, in my private practice, like if I think of the same insecurities, it was, oh, it's me. When now I can go, oh, it's that like sticky thinking, or it's that little like gremlin showing up, and I can recognize it. And even though it's still hard, look, I obviously still get caught into it. I still have emotions about it, but just knowing and naming it and identifying it, and then accessing the resources, like speaking to someone about it or thinking through it or using some of the cognitive techniques or going to my therapist or going to my group is so helpful. Where maybe in the past I would have sat with it for months without knowing that it's not me. It's
Yeah,
just like a thinking pattern showing up that's unhelpful.
for sure. And you knew ACT before you came to Activate Vitality, didn't you? You had learned a bit about ACT.
A little bit. So I
Yeah.
had a therapist who used ACT, but not, I guess, not in a really formal way, just in the therapeutic terms, but not, yeah, I probably couldn't have told you what it was except what it stood for,
Yeah.
what the
Acceptance
acronym
and
stood for.
commitment therapy. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was about as much as I knew about it.
Yeah. And have you found that quite often our first kind of mental health training is more around CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and ACT is part of a third generation of cognitive and behavioral therapies, but it's a little bit more mindfulness focused. It does a different thing with the thoughts that come up in the way. Are there any things that ACT brought that was new to you for managing those thoughts, sticky
Mhm.
thoughts?
Yeah, I guess that's maybe like being an occupational therapist. I'm already quite kind of action focused in both the therapy that I do with others and in the way I kind of work through stuff in myself. So what I think AMTA has done is maybe given vocabulary to things I do already. Because I see it as, so as an OT, I have this like toolbox of things, and here I use CBT or BBT, or here I problem solving, and here I do this. And ACT have maybe given a name, because I always say to my clients, like, what is the smallest next step? What is the next smallest action you can take that's successful? And, that in ACT terms, I think would be like a towards move. Yeah, I guess maybe just match some theory with things that I was already doing, make it a bit more formal. And when I look at my toolbox, being able to go, oh, I have this or I have that.
Yeah, for sure. I felt that when I discovered ACT, that it formalized a lot of the things I was doing naturally. And I had found that when I was working with my clients in that more behaviorally focused way as well, that when the thoughts came up and got in the way, I was a bit uncomfortable with some of my traditional CBT tools because I felt that a lot of clients I was working with were fairly shame prone and quite anxious. And so if I paused and had them challenge or look at their thought as distorted, sometimes that just fed into
Yeah.
that negative sense of self and invalidated them. And so I dodged around addressing the thoughts that came up. And often behaviors will take care of it. Changing behavior will take care of it. But I felt like I needed a better tool for managing it. And so I loved how ACT really has us turn toward the difficult thought and just make it a bit less sticky. We don't have to change the content. We can just
Yeah.
unhook from it a little bit and just try and see what we could do to make it a bit less sticky and move forward. So sometimes it's naming it. Sometimes you talked about the gremlins. Oh, the gremlins come in, they're talking to me. And that's a bit of a way of creating this sense of our mind isn't always telling us the truth. It comes along and tells us things that aren't me, actually. I don't actually believe that. And I can hear the gremlins and go, oh, yeah, that's just the gremlins. Like, they're back. I know this. They do this every time I stretch and grow and or am about to stretch and grow. And I'm really going to
Yeah.
let them stand in the way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I'm often also, as you say, like very uncomfortable with traditional CBT, because I feel like what you said, so the clients that I work with are very shame prone, but even in myself, I wouldn't go like nothing against CBT. And I think there is a lot of evidence and for specific
Absolutely.
applied groups, it's useful.
Yeah.
But for myself and the things that I get stuck in, CBT also isn't helpful. If someone were to tell me that my thoughts were incorrect and now I had to try and change it, that's very difficult. And I've been doing a lot of training around trauma and trauma work, and often those distorted thoughts are actually based in trauma and it's in our body. We can't just change the way we think, it will show up. So when we are triggered in a certain way, or if you, like, as you say, as we grow and stretch, I could have done CBT until I was blue in the face and understood my thoughts 5 or 6 years ago. The way that they showed up now, I needed different tools to sit with them and to know that there wasn't anything wrong with me if they showed up. It was a way of engaging with them. And even if they don't change, and even if they do still keep showing up, I don't have to believe them, or I can separate myself from them and recognize. I love that. And I actually don't know if they do this in act, but they do it in DBT and mindfulness. So like the wise mind and with the emotional mind and the thinking brain or something like that. But I love separating that and just knowing that we have access to these different parts of ourselves.
Yes, I love that too. It's that like emotional brain, thinking brain, and a Venn diagram, and they overlap. And in the middle is the wise mind. And if we're
Yeah.
all in our emotional brain, sometimes we try to get all into our thinking brain. And actually, we're not effective in either extreme. We're most effective when we can be present with both emotions and thoughts.
Yeah, exactly. And because some clients get stuck in their thinking brain. I think I'm that kind of client sometimes as well.
Yeah.
That they're super good at rationalizing and intellectualizing and identifying, and they can tell you the textbooks and they can understand their DSM diagnosis front to back, but they need to feel their emotions. So if I'm just doing CBT with that client, they're going to run circles around me and we're not going to really change anything.
My therapist did that to a lot to me. Karlien, how do you feel about that? I think it's Karlien.
Yeah. I think these are the worst kind of clients of that. Like we will get stuck in the thinking and the understanding, and we probably know the diagnosis, but now we have to feel it.
Like, let me tell you what I think about the feeling and all the complicated layers of it. No, tell me what you feel. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that we can easily both talk about attending therapy. Like, I think that this is that thing we need to do to the more we think that everybody else out there has it all worked out, has this perfect, easy life where everything just happens on the rainbow. None of that's true. But if nobody actually talks about the things that are challenging and the ways we get help, I think that it's a bit of a disservice. And so being able to, as people who are doing all right in life, it's nice to be able to tell people, hey, I go to therapy, I pay for coaching, I get help,
Yeah.
and it's not all smooth. Stuff comes up. For
Yeah.
sure it does.
Yeah. When I started working at the private acute clinic where I was working just before I started my private practice, that was the first time that I actually heard of therapists being in therapy. I honestly thought that if you were a psychologist, which was the profession I was looking after at this stage, that you had it all worked out. And I had some like really amazing colleagues who also just spoke about it openly and who would be really effective therapists, but who would also share, obviously, in the right circumstances about private stuff and about being in therapy and about not having it all together.
Yeah.
And I think that's even now I'm seeing the traditional model of the neutral therapist and the client like lying on the bed. That's changing because I've even from my clients, I've started doing a bit more. I don't know if you know Urban Yalom. So
Oh,
he's
yeah, I've heard a little bit.
so he's written lots of books and he's an American psychotherapist, analyst, something. But anyway, he is very brave in sharing some of his stuff. And that's often when I get feedback from my clients, that's what they really enjoy is when I say, my husband and I also sometimes get stuck there, or I'm also experienced that in my life. Well, yeah, totally. I get difficult emotions. I've experienced this. And obviously in a bounded way and not in a performative kind of that's unhelpful for the client, but even like both in the coaching arm of my business and in therapy of my business, I really embrace sharing a bit more. And that's what I've also enjoyed about being in your coaching program is that you share us and that makes us feel, or certainly make me feel much more normal and that it's okay. And yeah, again, that shame, it just breaks that level of shame. And recently also, I'm much more open about being in therapy and being in whatever I need to be at when I'm in it.
Yeah. We have to, in order to continue to grow, like I think a lot of therapists are good at knowing that they need to learn more to grow professionally. And I think that what is less common knowledge is that we need support to grow personally in order to grow professionally, that it's a this whole
Yeah.
person thing. And so you can I mean, I've met so many OTs who take all the courses, go on and get the master's or master's is minimum for a lot of people, but it wasn't when I went, or the OTD. And I think education is wonderful. And I really love that if you are doing education because you're passionate about learning, that's awesome. But I also find it can be a really crafty way for high achievers that tend toward perfectionism to keep learning because they're not quite feeling good enough to go do the thing. And so I think it's good all things, depending on your motive, have a different flavor. And we often can't see when that learning, spinning to keep us outside of that wall of launching.
Yeah.
We often can't see that's actually a really crafty way our mind is protecting us from taking a risk.
Yeah, 100%. I love a good course. If education was free in South Africa, or if the government was paying, I would only be studying. That would be my like absolute thing. And then now with online courses, I've also gotten stuck in that trap of just signing up for this, signing up for that, and feels like you're taking action, but you're not actually. And as you say, there are definitely things where like I think learning is good and it helps, and we should all keep on developing ourselves professionally. But somewhere we also have to take action on things that are difficult. We have to recognize the difference. We have to recognize when we're doing something because we really need maybe that training or that next level of education,
Yeah.
or where we're just staying there because it's scary to do the private practice or launch the podcast or
Yeah.
put together the workshop or whatever it is that we're avoiding. Yeah, at least I, I feel like the older we get, the coping mechanisms get more crafty. They like sneak in and then they recognize, oh my man, I'm doing it in a different way.
Hello, George. I see what you're doing there, and it's all
Yeah, exactly. They're just kind of gremlins with like a mask on, and then you need say, oh, it's the same one. It's just like a different shape.
that is such a visual. And because gremlins actually have that, like thinking of the Gremlins movie, right? They're soft and fuzzy on the outside, and then they
Yes,
turn.
that's true. Yeah, exactly. That's true. They look so inviting, just like the online course you want to sign up for. But actually, there's something else. Yeah.
It's a funny one to think about too, as people who sell online courses, right? You don't want to say to people, "Oh, you don't need another course." But I think it's that kind of checking in on why you're signing up, and are you signing up for the thing that you actually need to move forward? And I think that being able to work on those internal barriers can really help. And I'm sure you bring that a lot to the coaching that you offer because your background is as a mental health therapist.
Yeah. Yeah, we're all about, I think everything I offer in the master classes and the educational offer, you can read a book, you can go on YouTube, you can find it somewhere else. But it's that element of distilling it and applying it to being an OT in private practice, then or a mental health therapist in private practice. And then I think our group coaching calls are so often not about the content. It's about the barriers, identifying the perfectionist thinking or, the high achieving or the fear of failure or
Yeah.
whatever it is that may be showing up.
Yeah.
And it's also when you were saying both of us sell online courses or programs, but I also think for us, we want the right people in our program. We don't want someone to just sign up because they need to sign up for something and they're avoiding something else. We want the people who are right for us, who are a good fit, who, yeah, I think come with the same. And this is where it's difficult. Is what like to actually describe the transformation? Because how do you quantify that? How do you say to someone, "This is what we offer in our group programs"? It's not like so. Yes, you will have the marketing plan, and we will do how to do the pricing and within that, but the actual transformation is those like internal things
Yeah.
and decreasing the shame and like sitting there in the group coaching program and someone else is going, "Ah, me too."
Yeah.
And somehow we have to share that with people.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because I feel like sharing those transformations, they're not super concrete for when you think about the marketing little like,
Yeah.
what's that? What's the ROI? The ROI is that sometimes it's that someone's husband is feeling more connected to them because they're not so in their head all the time, or someone's taken a dance class, or that's me, but
Yes.
things like that. But those aren't like nice little sound bites for marketing. However, when taken in context, when you know the whole big picture, it's the most beautiful thing because you're changing lives then, not just helping people with businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. And isn't that in a way would be like being in therapy and being a therapist is as well? So if I have a client who at the end of our 6 months together takes a dance class, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's not necessarily what I'm going to put on my marketing, but that is an unbelievable, yeah, step that they might be taking because of whatever else is going on in their lives
Yeah.
and really changing something, not just the flashy things that people like to put on their marketing, not the, yeah, as you say, like the big return on investment things. Maybe it means that, I don't know, maybe you enter my group program and you think you're going to be launching this thing at the end of 6 months, but actually you decided right now I'm going to spend time with my kids. That is a great transformation.
Yes. Yes. Yes, if there was a SMART goal at the beginning, you didn't pass it, and that was not the point, right? It was
Yeah, exactly. Your timeline completely changed.
yeah. And that, because I think that's so important that you allow people, give people permission to give themselves permission to pivot and check in with themselves, because achievers tend to be so goal oriented that they lose sight of the fact that, oh, maybe the reason I'm not getting to that is because it's not the right thing. And what is
Yeah.
the right thing? I might have to slow down and listen to myself and feel some things to figure that out.
Yeah, exactly. And what I love about ACT is that thing of checking whether your goals are aligned with your values. I guess that is a really big thing that's landed for me through is, yeah, that's not just taking any action, because that I can do. I can take action all day long. It's like a strength of mine, but making sure that that action is aligned with my values and that it's actually not just indiscriminate action for me personally has been really helpful. And it's like, that's, I think, my journey that I'm always on, and it'll probably keep on coming around in different ways. But yeah, I think that values aligned element is a big one for me.
That reminds me, I was a bit stuck on the podcast idea for a while. And part of it was because I was in the process of refining my messaging for my group coaching program, for my marketing. I mean, I know all the transformations that happen in Activate Vitality, but what that messaging needs to be on the outside so that people aren't confused, that was hard to. And so, had I launched the podcast at the time I was preparing to do so, it would have had a theme that actually I didn't stick with in my marketing because it wasn't all that effective. And so there was some wisdom in the stall. It wasn't just it was about getting clearer on the purpose of it. And where I had a really big breakthrough moment was actually sitting down to outline the values of Activate Vitality, which would inform the values of the podcast. And then it was very clear what the path was. And those things weren't clear when I started creating Activate Vitality. I had a sense, because obviously we create things that align with our own values, because otherwise, what's the point? But the ones that I wanted to highlight, once I got clear on what this podcast needed to contain in terms of values, it was like, boom, it's the Brave OT podcast. And here's where we're at. And one of the big things is abundance mindset too. And I love that this is us modeling that sense of abundance, because you and I could have a lot of the same people in our programs, and we just want people to have the right kind of help. And we want to support each other in succeeding in our businesses and be allies, not competitors.
Yeah, that's actually, I was telling you before we started recording that earliest day I was on someone's YouTube channel. That is a direct competitor of mine in South Africa. We do very similar coaching, and we've connected and reached out, and we said we wanted to talk about this, that it's about that abundance mindset and knowing there's enough to go around. And also that you aren't the therapist for everyone, you aren't the coach for everyone, and being a really kind of values aligned therapist means that sometimes you have to say, I'm not the right one for you, but go to my colleague Karlien, or actually, I'm hearing this. Maybe that's the person you should connect with. And this is whether you work in the coaching world or in private practice. I think that scarcity mindset and that competition mindset has crept in, and people try. I mean, I've heard horror stories of people not wanting to connect or collaborate or
Yeah.
hoarding time for themselves or having really long wait lists instead of referring on. And I think I've been really lucky since I've been in private practice. I've just connected with people who are so willing to share their knowledge, to share how they do things, and I learn from them, and I want to give back to other people. And then in the coaching world, we met in Trisha's program, and then I'm in your program now, and yeah, I just love that. And I love when I find an OT or a coach or someone who shares.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm also just not a naturally competitive person, so
Me neither.
I wouldn't really engage with it. I love when I find someone I'm like, oh yeah, I see you. Cool, we can support each other.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it really works well. I feel like everyone benefits then. Because also if OT grows, if people know more about occupational therapy, about mental health in occupational therapy, about this kind of coaching, if they know that's available as a service, then everyone wins. Then we just add to the pool of people who's going to go, oh, I want to go to an OT for that. Instead of going, I want to go to a psychologist or a counselor or something else. And then, yeah, then we all grow up.
It's true. When one of us wins, we all win. And
Yeah.
I think it's a really neat, like, I feel that I don't encounter a ton of that competitive vibe in OT, certainly some. But for the most part, we kind of feel like the underdog that needs to stick together. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's important because we're so misunderstood that we often get excited to be in a space with people who understand us, and that very often you're the only person for many miles who does what you do. Like, it's
Mhm.
truly, there's not a lot of competition.
Yeah. Even when I was doing the interview earlier today, when we first met, we're the only two in South Africa that does what we do that we know of. So they said we can start our own little two-person support group, even though we're competitors. If we
Yeah.
support each other, that's much better because we both need the support.
There's so much healing in community. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that we've seen it with doing group therapy for others. Often people think what they need is individual, customized support, but there's something about community. And I think, I don't know, what do you think it is about community?
I think it's just on a neurological level, those mirror neurons. That's
Yes.
how we learn, like from being a child, we need our mother to validate our feelings and we need to see that she feels what we're feeling and digesting it in a way that makes it digestible for us. So that's how neurologically we're made to be. So for me, group therapy and group coaching just encourages that we need those feelings mirrored. We need those emotions validated, and that can unhook us into moving a bit past the shame, whatever it is. So for me, it's physiological. It's who we are. We can't get away from it.
And I think it goes both ways too, that we're getting that mirroring from others. But as we see others learning and growing in ways that we're trying to learn and grow, that there's also that neurological and social too, right? That there's that element of that we're social beings who are wired to be like those we're in community with because
Yeah.
it's safety. And if you're extricated from your tribe, you're not safe any longer. And thinking about our primitive versions of our humanity and or other cultures too, right? That you need community for safety. And so if we are in community with those who are moving in the direction that we're moving, or those who are a few steps ahead of us, or that we can reflect and support people who are learning what we've just learned, it's almost like a passive way to change. Because
Yeah.
like you say, it's neurological. We're just doing what our
100%.
brains want to do.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I love the work of Irvin Yalom. So if anyone's listening to this and you haven't looked at his work, he took his model is the psychosocial interactive model,
Okay.
and he has these curative factors. So these things that happen in group processes. So instilling hope and modeling social skills and universality and classes and cohesion and all of those things that happen in normal social groups. And then in group therapy or in a kind of more formalized group coaching program, those same things happen. And that's healing. So the curative factors in themselves are healing. And yeah, and I think that's also why it's important to make sure that we surround ourselves with the right, because we will become like that. So if I'm in a group full of competitive people, that's how I'm going to become. If I'm going to be in a group full of people who don't align with my values, I will take on their values. So we have to make sure that we choose our groups correctly because we're made to become like our tribe.
Yes, it's so true. Or even I find that just like who pops up in my social media, it's not always who I chose, right? That some things
Yes.
are selected for us. And when things are showing up that are very misaligned with my values, it feels stressful and abrasive. And I feel this sense of agitation and irritation like, enough, bro, hustle energy, drop it. I don't want to see
Right.
more of it. Certainly, there's some tactical things I can learn, some strategic things that I can learn, but when it's showing up in a way that's so opposite to how I wanna show up, it puts my nervous system into that sense of distress almost. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think social media has put a next layer of, I guess, challenge on this because
Yeah.
that's you, as you say, you can't choose what pops up on your feed, and seeing something over and over again with a similar message or a certain value system, even if we're just thinking about like body stuff and the way that we think our body should look, or the way that people talk about, as you say, like hustling or always trying to do more and achieve more and be more productive, we start to internalize those values even if we don't want to. So yeah, social media I think can be good for lots of things, but also provides new, unique challenges for our social beings.
Do you have any tips for reducing that
Oh.
impact on social media? I'm just putting you on the spot. I didn't
Yeah.
ask this before, but
No, it's fine. So what I do with my eating disorder groups is I give them very particular accounts to follow, and we encourage them to delete and unfollow all the unhelpful accounts. And it works a little bit. Like the algorithm gets a bit used to, I think, knowing what you want to see. So maybe like anti-diet things or whatever it is. So I guess in a practical way, that's what you can do. What I do for myself is sometimes I take time off social media because times where I feel a bit more capable of protecting myself or like putting that boundary in place or following something as soon as it comes up. And other times where I know I'm a bit more vulnerable. So then I purposefully avoid it. So if I know maybe I'm having a bad body day, I'm not going to really go on Instagram because then I know it's going to like hook onto all of my insecurities. It's difficult, but I think it's also just giving yourself permission to protect yourself. Yeah. Like even I was actually thinking of that earlier today, even feedback forms, putting out surveys and getting feedback from our clients. Sometimes I have days where I can read that, and sometimes I have days where I can't. If I'm feeling a bit vulnerable, I know maybe today is not that day because I'm going to read something, and even if it's not made negatively at all, my brain's going to hook onto that in a negative way. And other days I feel fine and okay, and I can look at that feedback very neutrally, and I can implement some of the constructive criticism, but it won't like hook onto my self-esteem in a way.
I've had that happen where I'm avoiding an email or a message or something because I'm similarly, I just know that I just can't handle it right now. And then days later, I read it and it would have lifted me up. They were so good.
Yeah.
Darn it, what was my mind doing?
I have this great example. So there's my OT who was one of my lecturers in university, and she is amazing. She was my group therapy lecturer. I've always looked up to her. She runs her own business kind of training therapists in the certain group modality. And the one day I saw a voice message from her on my phone. And I avoided listening to that message for 5 days because I was so sure she was going to tell me I'm doing something wrong or I shouldn't be doing something. And actually, when I finally listened to it, she wanted to collaborate. She wanted to work with me. But I just, for 5 days, I would see that message and it would just be like, nope, I cannot listen to it. And actually, it would have been wonderful to listen to all of it. And cost me like lessened anxiety if I just listened to it.
Yes. Your gremlin was the green slimy one those days,
Yeah.
not the fuzzy one.
Yeah, not the buzzy demon. I don't know.
I love it.
Demon, maybe.
Yep, maybe. There's actually an ACT video called Demons on a Boat that I think they changed it to something else that was a little bit more, but
Really?
it was about that avoidance,
That's
that
funny.
the premise is that you're sailing along on this ship of life and then floating around, and then you go, "Oh, I'd like to go to that island." And then every time we move to that island, these monsters come up from the bottom of the boat and snarl and scowl, and then if you go back to floating aimlessly, they go back down. And you go, "No, I can't float aimlessly. I really want to get to this island." So you start moving toward that island, and these monsters come up and they're snarling and growling. And the idea is that the monsters represent our thoughts that tend to come up as we try to go in new directions and chart new
Yeah.
paths. And once we learn that those monsters under the boat actually can't hurt us and they're fictional, and we learn that if we persist, we can still get to the island, and the
Yeah.
monsters end up becoming not such a big deal by the time we get there.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that because I'm thinking of something that we often talk about in your program, and that it's, I guess, the action of resting and the action of giving yourself space and permission to not do anything. And that's when my monster show. That's when those, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that. This person's going to be angry. You're going to miss an email, blah, blah, blah. And actually, those monsters are fictional. That's such a great analogy. And I think learning to tolerate the anxiety around that and just see that it's okay and that nothing's going to happen, and doing it enough that your nervous system kind of, okay, it's fine to do nothing. It's fine to rest. It's fine to take time out. It's fine to not be all action all the time. Yeah.
I love a story you shared, and I've had you share this a few times because I just love it. The
True
acting
story.
All right, could you tell your true story?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so this must be like 2 months ago now. I don't even know. So I had a cancellation in the morning, and I could have booked some clients. I could have done some admin in that plan, but I decided I wanted to go for a walk. Cool, I'm going to go for my walk. My first client's on as well. And I just started my walk. It's about 5 or 10 minutes in. Because the aim with the walk, it's just kind of right there, right, is aligned with my values. I wanted to make time for myself. I wanted to rest. I wanted to get out in nature, do something that was nice and fun.
Mhm.
But as I was walking, I realized that I was actually trying to kind of get my steps in, and I was trying to go too far and too fast, and that it wasn't fun. My body just didn't want to actually walk that day. But I decided that my body needed to go for a walk, but it didn't. It needed to actually just kind of rest. So I stopped at a park, I got some coffee, I listened to a podcast, and I sat under a tree for a good like 15, 20 minutes, and I didn't go far at all. I actually switched off my watch that was like measuring my steps. Because that's so about achievement. Even in our race, we have to achieve something. And
Mhm.
I took a picture, I posted it on my Facebook group, I shared it with you guys. And there was, something in that was just allowing myself to just be and meet my needs in that moment.
Yeah.
And nothing fell apart. And those voices came, the voices of, you're wasting time, you should check your email, what if this, what if that, blah, 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 check your voice notes. But
And you
nothing happened.
continued to rest. The voices came up and you
Exactly.
continued to be there.
Yeah, exactly. It was fine. Nothing fell on the floor. Nothing was a disaster. And I want to actually try and action something like that again. That was a very wise version of myself 2 months ago.
I love it. I love it. And it's those are these moments that I get so excited to celebrate because the transformation is going to from being very achievement oriented to being able to stop and notice, wait a minute, I'm doing that again. Sometimes there's time for being achievement oriented. Absolutely. It's a secret to success, but not always. We need to
Yeah.
rest and being able to go, ooh, I'm trying to attach some achievement into my rest and tuning in with your body. I love it. You had also read a book around that time called 4,000
Yeah.
Weeks.
Yeah, 4,000 weeks. It was actually recommended by someone else in the Activate Vitality group.
Yeah.
And it's such 4,000 weeks is the amount of weeks we are on Earth, the kind of average human being. I think he said if we live until 70 or something like that.
Okay.
Anyways, so
We might live longer than that.
Yeah, you
Maybe.
might live longer, or you might live shorter than that. Who knows?
Yeah.
But that we actually have a very limited amount of time, and we cannot possibly do everything. So there's this I think in hustle culture, this thinking out there that if I just plan my days correctly, if I just prioritize enough, if I just have the right morning routine or the right evening routine, I will be able to do everything. And he basically makes the case that we can't. We just have to intentionally decide what's going to fall on the floor, what is okay, what are we not going to give attention to. And the things that are actually important is often the relational stuff, the family stuff, the body stuff, the self-care things. And there's no, I fall into this trap that I think there's this amazing future where I will have time to rest and everything will be fine and my to-do list will be under control. And that's not true. It's not true. So I have to make time for the other things that are actually the important things, regardless of the to-do list and the chaos. And we just have to do the things that are important. It's a great book. I think you should link it to in the
Yeah,
podcast.
I will.
It's such an awesome book.
So
I've read it twice now. And
Yeah?
I'll read it the third time.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so good. I think I finished listening to it, but it's one of those I do well to listen and read the book, or I'll get it on audio, but then if I want to keep it as a reference, I'll buy it. Or early on when I notice that, and then I can actually make notes on it while I'm listening. But it's 4,000 Weeks. The subtitle is Time Management for Mortals, which I think is sneaky, by Oliver Burkeman, Burkeman. In some copies, it's got bananas, like slimy bananas on the front. I think my copy actually has a really
That's so
pretty.
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've seen the banana one. I don't know what that's about. Mine's on Audible also, so
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
what the cover is.
It's the bananas on Audible. It's bananas. But it's interesting, right? Like it's the title, Time Management. It's appealing to what people are looking for, but then giving them what they need. And
Yeah.
love that.
Which I love, which is what we do, right?
We do.
So
We
we
totally-
appeal to what people are going to search for on the internet, but actually then we give them what they need.
Yeah.
So that internal transformation.
If I marketed my program as, hey, you're going to sit under more trees and take nap, I might not sell very well.
Yeah, pay me to help you sit under a tree.
Yeah, that's a powerful.
And sitting under the
outcome.
tree was amazing. Exactly. It was, I haven't done that this whole year. So
Yeah.
that was the first time I was doing that in a whole year. So definitely it's worth something. Like I'll invest money to give myself permission to sit under a tree.
For sure. Now you have a podcast too, don't you?
Yeah, I have a private audio feed. You can sign up via the link in my bio on my Instagram, Karlien_OT. And I think there maybe are 11 episodes now. It's also one of those things that I was waiting to take perfect action around the podcast. And I just decided I wanted to play with it. And I did a course, which was actually a really good course, and took action at the end of it and just put this private audio feed out there. And you'll see there's no perfect audio. It isn't like very consistently recorded, but it's very interesting to listen to. So it's really, I think, the both and. So to help people understand my journey of starting a private practice as a mental health OT, and then speaks to some of those like transformation, self-sabotage, giving yourself permission, all of those things we had been speaking of. And then every now and then when I feel like I have something to share, I add an episode. Like last week I shared about a business failure of mine, something that didn't go well. And I just recorded an episode around it. So every now and then, I don't know how often, infrequently, but there are new episodes every now and then.
That's great. Yeah. I love that. And Brene Brown often talks about how like shame loses its power if we talk about it. And how cool is that you can just pop on to record an episode and talk about it. Yeah. So I messed up. Let's all learn from this. And suddenly there's no shame because you've aired it out.
Yeah. I must say that was for me when I found myself able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, this is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's such good modeling for the people who you support because they can see then that it's not a smooth road. We learn more from our mistakes than we do from our successes.
Exactly. I never want people to maybe look at us or look at someone with a successful business and think they have it all sorted out because we don't. You know, we're learning alongside everyone else. And the fact that we're still struggling, I think, helps someone else give them permission to also struggle and hear it and talk about it. Yeah, everything we'd said.
So I have a couple last questions for you. What does being brave mean to you? Talk about putting you on the spot. I didn't send this to you in advance.
It's 100% fun actually enjoying these things more spontaneously. I'm not a big planner. So when it's being brave means me, I think for me personally, being brave means going slower, means sitting with stuff instead of my habitual taking action. So again, yeah, brave, I think, is doing the thing that's uncomfortable. And so I feel like the thing that is uncomfortable is going slower rather than faster, or taking a race rather than pushing yourself to see a client when you know you actually need a break. Yeah. So in action is bravery for me, especially in this
That's
world. This
yeah,
world where we all need to be so busy all the time. I think
busy, busy.
resting and going slower is brave.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. How would you like to see OTs be just a little bit more brave in the next few years?
I would love all the OTs to run some private service or open a private practice. And I actually know that's sort of opposite to what I said about taking action. But to do that in a way that you're allowed to rest and be flexible and all of those things. But I want OTs to know that we are allowed to. If you're thinking of, am I allowed to do this? Yes, just do it. What is the worst that can happen? Someone can be unhappy with it. So what? Someone can ask you, should you be doing this? Are you allowed to be doing this? People have asked me that. So what? Sure, they get to have an opinion. Yeah, that's fine with me. But we can still do it because there are people doing things out there. There are coaches. There are mindset coaches. There's everyone offering a service. And if OTs don't offer a service, especially in the mental health space, we're going to fall behind. And I think we can offer something of amazing value. We should just do it.
Yeah. Yes. I have one last question, actually. How has participating in Activate Vitality impacted you?
Yeah. So in so many ways, firstly, I love working with an OT with a similar name to mine, similar values to mine, but that obviously won't be true for other people. Yeah, I think the community part of it. So I was really interested in the individual coaching parts that you were offering as well. But the community has been the one where I've gotten so much out of it. All the things we said. So decreasing shame, having a space for accountability, showing up, people asking you questions, understanding that you're not the only one. The vulnerability in this community is so amazing. Everyone is really, they're not blocked by shame to just speak about what's actually going on. And people talk about everything. So they talk about their businesses, they talk about their lives, their kids, their relationships. And I love that. I love your planner. I just love everything about Active Vitality. But the community in the group coaching program, I think, has been the most valuable part to me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's interesting because when I set out to create it, you can't picture who's going to show up. And therefore, you can't picture what the community is going to feel like. And so I wish I could go back and whisper to myself a couple years ago it evolved to, or that would have taken the fun out of it. But the community, I never imagined how beautiful that part would be. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
appreciate your
Yeah.
contributions. You set the tone. Each individual sets the tone by showing up authentically and bravely and vulnerably. And I so appreciate you for doing that in the group. I appreciate you for doing that here today. How can OTs and other therapists aspiring to have mental health practices, how can they access your support?
So the best is to follow me on Instagram, Karlien_OT. So all of my new stuff is there whenever I offer a workshop or when I open the cohort for thriving therapists. So they can find me. The best is on Instagram and on Facebook. And if they sign up for the Thriving Therapist audio feed, they will be added to my mailing list. And then you'll know everything that's happening.
Perfect.
Yeah, I don't have a website yet. All of that will come.
Yeah.
But Instagram, Facebook is the best place to access me.
And I will put those links in the show notes.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Yeah, I've so enjoyed the conversation. I've enjoyed knowing you and being part of your program. Thank you.
Thank you. If you want to be live in conversation and community with Karlien and I, please reach out to me. I'd love to invite you to the Activate Vitality program. Karlien's a member, and the community is just as lovely as she described. If you're a therapist who works in mental health in South Africa and you're interested in starting a private practice and needing some support in doing so, please reach out to Karlien on Instagram. She has so many great resources, and don't forget to check out her Thriving Therapist audio feed. As always, be brave, OTs.